Chris Murray. We're just adjusting our camera here to get both Susan and I on screen. Can you see that? Okay, good.
Okay.
Hey, well, welcome to How to Have Tough Conversations at Work. Can I hit play?
You can hit play.
Excellent.
Okay.
Did the slides disappear for you guys? I think they did.
Okay. Hit show. You got to hit show. That's why they were actually showing.
Okay.
Hit show.
Start broadcast. Show. Show. Oh, there we are. But when I hit play, they disappear.
There we go.
Excellent.
All right. Now things are beginning to happen. There was a little bit of panic there. Not that that's new. Today, we have to tell you, we normally have Cody with us, who is our backup and wonderful wingman for all of this, and she has the flu, so she will not be joining us, which basically means
we have to figure everything out.
We have to figure everything out. So hopefully things will still go as smoothly as we'd like to see them go, and if not, well, we'll do our best to keep you in the loop and at least be talking to you throughout this. And even though that won't necessarily mean a tough conversation, it could mean a tougher version of the webinar. But we're hoping it all goes well. So
I'm Chris Murray, and this is Susan Clark.
Yes.
And today, what we want to talk to you about are tough situations that you can respond to in a more positive way. And so these are some of the tough conversations or situations we think come up, but we also want to know what your tough situation is. And even if you don't tell us, we'd love you to write it down. Some of the things that we've heard, though, are, you know, giving feedback to somebody, a coworker or peer, or even a spouse, but we're talking about work, so we'll stay there. Although we work together, we're spouses, so that's disagreeing with your boss. That's often when there's a hierarchy situation, that's a tough situation. Or saying no. Some people don't even feel comfortable saying no. Dealing with a difficult client, maybe they're not following your process, or they're always complaining, something like that. Or even asking for a raise. And I have to get a Kleenex, so carry on.
We're taking she decided that she could just get up and leave. We may, which is good. Better to have the Kleenex handy in case her cold continues. And we're hoping that things are working for you out there. If for any reason they aren't, you can write something in your chat box. That'll give us
over there.
Yeah, I think I can find it and look for it. And that'll let us know that you are having some sort of issue or not able to get in. So do let us know that on chat.
Okay. So again, what we want you to do is, these are some situations that we've heard our clients struggle with when we've given this talk before. Those are the situations that come up in the room. But think about as you're going through this, we want you to be thinking about your tough situation, because we really want you to tailor it. So write that down, and then write down what stops you actually from speaking up, or even if you do speak up, what stops you from being successful in those situations, because we want you to be thinking about that as we go along.
I mean, we have some ideas about it, but of course, if maybe our ideas don't fit for you, maybe you have something to add, so that'd be great.
I cannot. We also have our dog down here who cannot.
Rosie, in case any of you haven't met Rosie before. All right, so let's
carry on.
Okay. So, real tough conversations aren't easy. There really are some genuine things that people worry about, but it's also a natural part of all relationships, and in business counts as a relationship.
Absolutely.
And it is your key to influence, and also your engagement.
So we want to recognize that it is real, but we also think it's really important. And today we're going to give you three behaviors that undermine your success, three keys that are crucial for your success, and practical tools that you can apply right away to make your conversations go well. So, well, first, there's me, and I guess I like pink. I didn't think about that. I'm wearing pink and pink. My experience around tough conversations, if some of you that haven't heard our TED Talk, we have a TEDx Talk, Conflict, Use It, Don't Diffuse It. I talk about growing up with an Army Colonel dad who was often angry at the dinner table. So I learned quite quickly that, to speak up meant danger. And so I really wasn't, I did try it a few times. I tried it with I have a lot of emotional energy, and that did not go well. So I decided, okay, we're just going to figure out what he wants, and I'll just forget what's important to me in a lot of ways. And so I really repressed what I wanted, what I thought, in order to make him happy. And that, as that showed up at work, I had this, I was a consultant with Arthur Andersen, had a big project, 6-person. I was managing the project. It was a Pacific Northwest software company. And we were supposed to have this, it was about a 6-month time frame to deal with this client's problem. And the senior manager came in and said, okay, this is the strategy of how we're going to approach the project. And in my head, I thought, that's not going to solve the client's problem. But I had that training early on, so I didn't say that. I asked a question, do you think this is going to solve this client's problem? And he was like, of course it is, you know. And so I was catapulted back to that dinner table. I shut up and put my head down and did the work. We got to the end of the 6 months. We brought the partners at Arthur Andersen wanted to garner more work at this client, so they brought this big VP in and said, you know, of all the projects we're going on, how are we doing? Because there was more than mine. And he goes, well, you know that project Chris Marie led? That was a disaster, a complete disaster. And I just shrunk inside, and I was like, you know what? I am going to figure out how to do this differently because this sucks. I don't want to be blamed because I knew it was going to be a disaster and I didn't speak up. So I vowed then that I was going to learn how to speak up and I was going to actually help other people speak up. And I met Susan, who actually knew how to speak up, and I thought, that is really awesome. So let's go on to you.
Okay, well, at least I have on a different color. So for me, I guess the thing that stands out the most and about crucial conversations or difficult conversations for myself and what I learned about them was, I mean, early on, I think my thing was I figured the safest way to survive, and there were some good reasons why I learned this, was to be pretty guarded and protect myself. And I actually looked pretty defended. And I think as I grew up, a lot of times people thought, oh, she has a strong opinion. She knows what she thinks. She's going to say it. Sometimes that came across as I was really intense, difficult to deal with. And underneath that layer of all of that kind of protection that I had, I didn't really feel that way at all. Inside, I was actually just trying to make sure, I think I decided that the way to be safe in the world was to have a really strong opinion and don't let anyone mess with you, and definitely don't let them see that you really cared or that you were hurt. And that style served me well when I was young, but I didn't realize how much that was actually still a big part of who I was. And you know, I remember working with a dear friend of mine many years ago, Diane Anderson. Some of you may know her, but anyway, she was so surprised to learn that I wasn't always confident. She said, but you always seem that way. As a matter of fact, you always seem like, you know, it's your way or the highway. And I was like, really? You know, and then I started to get that feedback more and more. And I realized that came from that initial style of wanting to protect myself and not letting anyone see the impact they were having, or maybe for me not to even feel the impact that was going on. And so that, you know, that's, I've had to work hard. And, you know, this face, I do have a brow. It's sort of a difficult brow. And to be able to shift it, or at least own it, because I'm not going to get rid of my brow. And I probably always will have some intensity, but I can do it differently. And that's what's becoming important to me. And I've discovered the more and more that I can do that as a leader, the better and more effective I am. And especially in getting other input, getting people to give me real-time feedback, and having difficult conversations.
And what's different about us is we are not going to give you just a magic formula and you're going to rise above conflict and everything is going to be great. Because I don't know what human on earth is actually comfortable in conflict. So it's more, how can you ride the waves of what's happening inside of you and what's happening over there inside that other person to get to a mutually beneficial outcome. That's really the key. And for those of you that know nothing about us, we just gave you two very personal descriptions of who we are. We've been in business together since 2002, and we work with hundreds of leaders and teams, and we really help them kind of understand their own reactions to conflict, how to be better in that, and then build the bridges across the team so that they can actually get down to the real meaty, awesome, creative business strategy. Because a lot of times teams just want to go right to that business strategy and they haven't done any leadership development work on themselves, personal work, self-awareness, and nor are they dealing with the dynamics on the team. They're kind of overriding them. And so our work is really about how to actually help people do that differently, and teams to do that differently, and also leaders. So we do coaching, we do consulting, and we run these online programs. So there's a little bit about us, so if you didn't know. Okay, and we're about to publish our book, The Beauty of Conflict, Harnessing Your Team's Competitive Advantage. So that's going to be due out this spring. Okay, we're going to carry on. Enough about us. Back to you and your difficult conversation. So most of us have found most people don't like tough conversations. We weren't trained in it. It wasn't modeled well.
And the reason we don't like tough conversations is because often we think those conversations are going to lead to conflict, and we're not very good at conflict.
Well, we don't like what we feel inside, and we're worried about other people's reactions, and that feels too out of control, and so we really back away from a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and these people, much like you, are probably bright, accomplished, smart, competent people. So it's not like you're dumb or anything. It's like smart people have a tough time in conflict and feel stumped. So we want to actually give you some tools to how to handle it.
Now we want to talk a little bit about the statistics about what the impact is of not having these types of tough conversations, because that may help you be motivated a little bit more to have them.
Yes.
And one thing to think about, well, one is just simply, if you look at these statistics around engagement, 65% of all people are disengaged in an organization. You know, only 31.5 are engaged, 51% are disengaged, and 17.5 are actively disengaged. I mean, that is really a sad result, because you want your work. You're spending a lot of time at work. You want to feel excited about it, engaged in it.
Sorry, just making a note.
All right. So the other thing, and this is even probably a bigger challenge, is the cost of that silence. And now this actually is a real live example. In 2003, some of you may remember this, and the NASA Columbia shuttle incinerated. And so 7 astronauts died. And they did a lot of looking at what was the reason for that. And what came out in the report, and it's amazing that it was actually stated like this in a report, because it's a government document, you know, that there was a culture that prevented effective communication of critical safety information and stifled professional differences. So basically, because those differences weren't brought up, a pretty serious incident happened. And that's not the only thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've found that in healthcare, you know, in business, a lot of times it's not life-threatening, but here in NASA it is. In hospitals it often is. Mm-hmm. I mean, Susan has a story about a doctor just about to operate on the wrong knee because the patient wouldn't speak up because of that hierarchy issue.
So it's not, I mean, these are real live situations. And in business, a lot of time the result is poor strategy, or you don't get the best solution. But there can be a heavier cost, even to you. If you're not speaking up, it can impact your health.
Well, and even in a lot of times women, men don't speak up, but a lot of times women don't speak up, and so they don't actually get the same pay as men, or if they do speak up, they come across as brash, and so there's a lot of reasons of how to learn how to do this well, so you can get what you want in your career and your work. So there's 3 behaviors that actually undermine your success in these tough conversations. And you're going to recognize these. These are the basics, you know, fight, yelling, blaming, globalization, all these things. If you have more of a fight style, that gets in your way of having a tough conversation well. Did you want to talk about yourself?
Well, I mean, I think you could, obviously, this is not me, but I have that style. So I know well when I'm upset, when I'm threatened, I can start yelling, I can start blaming, I can, you know, pretty much all of them are things I've known.
Interrupting,
before.
debating,
Yes.
eye rolling. The other one is flight, and this is leaving, distracting, minimizing, you know, changing the subject, explaining, omitting your truth. And this is definitely a strategy that I've used a lot. When I was uncomfortable, people would say, why do you keep going to the bathroom so much? Because I interpreted the level of disagreement as quite threatening. Other people didn't. They were debating, but I was so keyed to that. It was very loud for me. And then what I didn't realize, and this is one that many people don't recognize that they have, is the freeze response. And this is where there's little to no eye contact. They're not aware. There's posture's rigid. For me, I actually, before I started leaving was actually progress. First, I just got frozen, and I would look down, and my posture would get stiff, and I'd stop breathing because I was so afraid of what was happening. So it's kind of like waking up from the freeze, and then you go to fight or flight. And these are real physiological experiences in our systems. And really, they are natural reactions to perceived danger. This is how we're wired. It's healthy. The problem is
Problem is, we no longer live where there are actually saber-toothed tigers coming into the business place. That's where those reactions came through, where things really were life or death, and that has passed. You may think there's a saber-toothed tiger there, and it's just me.
No. Well, and I think it's that intimidation of, oh my gosh, I'm going to disagree with my boss. Is he going to fire me? We go to this extreme reaction. I'm going to get fired if I speak up. And we're not saying that that doesn't happen, but we scare ourselves with that dramatic situation versus figuring out how to find those in-between places.
Now, the thing that happens most of the time is we've actually made this much more rational as we grow up. We get a little more sophisticated in these styles, and we begin to rationalize why we are. Like, I realized I became to rationalize needing to defend myself and protect myself, because since there really wasn't a saber-toothed tiger, I didn't have a good reason. So I had to come up with something else. And we are very rational beings.
Mm-hmm. And very sophisticated approaches.
Yes.
And in a healthy conversation, there's actually 3 areas that need to be paid attention to. These are those focus areas. There's what's going on with me. Then there's what's going on usually over there or between us.
And the
we. And then what's the problem we're trying to solve? Those 3 are all important. The problem is with those sophisticated styles we use, we tend to actually minimize or get rid of one or many of those things. So we're going to talk about that.
And we consider these to be the opt-out styles that undermine success in terms of having a really tough conversation. Mm-hmm. And the first one is what we refer to as the superstar. And thus, the superstar, like myself, really values action and results, and they tend to eliminate the other person, the we. And I can think of a client I was working with who always, basically they just decided going in, the best thing to do is have all my arguments set up because I really want to convince my boss that this is a good idea. Mm-hmm. And so they come in with a huge defense already at their, ready to kind of throw it at them. And they're kind of going in firing right off the bat instead of, pretty much just concerned about, I got to take care of myself here and keep doing that.
I mean, I was coaching specifically. This gal was asking for a raise, and she hadn't contacted me yet because when she said, she contacted me after having this conversation where she went into her boss and said, I deserve it. Men are underpaid, or men are overpaid, and I'm doing all this work and blah blah, all this stuff. Well, that did not go over well with her male boss, and it was really, we had to unwind that and back that up so she could actually have a successful conversation, which she did with some coaching. But that style of it's got to be this way is not really very influential at all. Okay. The second style is really the accommodator, and the accommodator really values harmony and relationships, and they tend to eliminate themselves. And this, as you can see, this was my strategy growing up because it was the safe thing to do. But it wasn't safe in business.
Well, and I was thinking of, sometimes I've worked with women, and there's one woman that comes to mind. She was actually a very high-level executive director of a large nonprofit. And the biggest thing was, she really took care of the people who worked for her and really made sure that their lives were pretty well taken care of. Like, if they needed something, and she did that because she actually knew that if she didn't, she might lose them. The problem was she started to burn out, and she was actually considering leaving the role because she was like, I just can't do this anymore. And it really took the coaching for her to realize that a lot of it had to do with she wasn't having these crucial conversations with some of her key people, that she needed them to do more work. And she wasn't saying, I need you to, I know you want a flexible schedule, but I can't give that to you right now. And so it really did become down to her showing up and talking about the impact some of the decisions people were having on her, and she just couldn't keep letting that happen.
The third style is the separator, and the separator has more kind of a rational demeanor, values clarity and calm, and what happens then is when there's a disagreement or conflict, they just focus on solving the problem, and they eliminate themselves and the other person, like there's no real human element.
A lot of times this can show up in our executive teams with, people very high up in an organization have a very rational reason why they need to make a decision to, maybe it's to lay people off or something really dramatic. But what they do is they spend the time rationalizing. I mean, there's a great example. I think it was in the book. It was Emotional Intelligence, but he talked about how the first guy was going to fire. They had to let go of the whole organization, and very rationally went down and told the people, "You're fired. It's because of cost reasons. We have to fire you. I'm sorry. You've done good work, bye." I mean, I'm sure more was said than that, but it was a very rational process.
Not very emotionally connected at all.
And most of those people got incredibly upset. They actually wanted to sue the company, badmouth the company, do all sorts of things. And someone, I remember reading this because someone coached this guy and said, look, you need to go back down there and have a whole different conversation. And really spent a lot of time helping them work.
I actually think they because they were not working with us, and somebody else down that was much more feeling oriented and actually talked about, you know what, we all love this company and we know it's hard, and because we love this company, we want it to survive, and so this is what we need to actually have happen. And some of you are going to be let go, and that, but he was connected to them in it, and it was completely different experience.
So that rational approach, though, can sound like really disconnected, not just from the people you're working for, but from yourself. And then it just becomes like this reason that no one can really buy, because the glue of emotions isn't there.
Yeah. So these are three, I'm sure there's maybe many other ways, but these are the ones that we see most typically in business and how people deal with conflict. So we're going to we want to actually help you transform these reactions so that you can have a healthy conversation and include those three areas, the three key areas.
First, you need to remember, though, that saber-toothed tiger is not there.
So first, how to actually include the me, because a lot of us don't include the me. And one way is to become aware of your opt-out style and what's happening inside of you. For any of the opt-out styles, it's important to know, this is what I'm doing, because we're pretty unconscious in our behaviors, and we're just opting out and not really being very aware of our impact at all to us or to other people.
And that's where I was saying, realize there's no saber-toothed tiger.
Yes.
And be compassionate for yourself that you thought there was one. That is a survival mechanism for when you're under stress. It's just not a helpful one. and to take responsibility for that reaction, to learn some tools that you can do on a regular basis to help you when you get caught in that. And we're going to give you one today. We actually spend quite a bit of time talking about this in our work. But the key here is to be willing to acknowledge that vulnerability and recognize that you are feeling some vulnerability first.
And that's a real, a lot of times in business, we don't want to let them see us sweat, and vulnerability is about exposing oneself to danger and being real. But the more you know, you don't need anybody else to take care of you. You can actually take care of yourself, yes, even in business, even in a tough conversation, and to open up and share what you really think, feel, and want. Because so much of us water our content down, or change the subject, or don't really speak up because we don't want to show, we either don't know or we don't want to show how we really feel. So this is a key cultivating tool that takes time to actually in practice and trial and error to cultivate, but we think it's a really powerful ingredient in tough conversations. And
so we want to give you a tool, one tool, to help you be able to manage your own reaction. And again, this is something that we have a lot of different things we offer in different programs we do, but this is one that's pretty powerful and pretty easy to do in any situation.
And so the Me tool is simply what we call orienting. And so a lot of times what happens when we're in those situations and we're intimidated, we've started a tough conversation, maybe we've found the courage to speak up, and something is happening over there. Maybe they're having a reaction. What happens is our focus actually narrows. We get to tunnel vision, and we just focused on that, and we're actually not really utilizing all of our resources. We're in that reaction state. So a simple basic tool is, one, just actually feel the back of you, because we're so focused on the thread out front, we've forgotten that we actually have this body here. So one, to feel, and you can even try it on right now, feel your bum in the chair, your feet on the floor, maybe wiggle your toes or swipe your feet to actually feel the connection. And just see if you can rest into the support of the chair. And you may notice your breath, and you can invite it to go deeper. We're actually working with your physiology to settle your system down. because you're having a physiological response. The other thing is actually to orient to your space. And what that looks like, because we've got this tunnel vision and we're focused there, is actually just turn your head really slowly in one direction, really slowly. And then see an object and just kind of take it in, notice it. Don't just skim over it, but kind of notice the texture, the shape, the color. And then turn your head again really slowly, looking at the space you're in. And then land on another object and take it in. And when I do that, like my body breathes. I try to breathe, my body breathes. So my actual system settles down. And physiologically, what we're doing is there's a nerve here, it's called the vagus nerve, that is responsible for our rest and digest response, which is the opposite of fight, flight, and freeze. So we're just actually kind of activating that when we turn really slow. You don't want to turn really fast, turn really slowly and let something in. Because you're also saying, it's not a saber-toothed tiger. I'm in this actual space. I'm in this actual body. I'm okay. I'm physically okay right now. And that's actually something you can ask. You can actually just sit there and go, am I okay? Or am I safe? Whichever resonates for you. And just check. Right now I am. Nobody's attacking me with pitchforks.
And I think, the key here is you can do these things without it being.
Nobody needs to know.
I mean, you can definitely do your feet on the floor without it being. And, when you're doing this oriented, it doesn't have to be like a big thing. It could be just a simple thing where I'm looking around the room.
Yeah.
It may not be as effective as the really slow version, but it helps, and it's a little more natural, and you may feel more comfortable doing it. It
disconnects you from that locked-on focus of the threat. It lets in more information, and your system goes, oh, there is more here. So.
And sometimes, depending on the situation you're in, this is the vulnerability level that you're willing to go to. You can even say to someone, just give me a minute. I need a second, because I realize I'm kind of getting charged up. I was anxious about this conversation. So I'm going to take a couple of breaths.
And that may feel like heresy for some of you in the business, but when you start to actually take charge of you will actually increase your influence, because you're not so battered around by somebody else outside of you. You're grounded and centered in you. And that's a really influential spot to be in. Okay. So again, Susan was saying, in our programs, we talk about many more tools, but this is kind of a go-to, simple, not obvious tool you can use anytime in the workplace.
So now we want to talk about the next focus area, which is the we. And when we're talking about the we, it's that what we mean by that is, for me, in my place of trying to protect myself, sometimes I could just not let new information in, and I could get very caught up in, like, I tend to be, if I'm honest, I tend to have a bit of a paranoid process. There were people out to get me at one point. It's like the saber-tooth tiger. They're not out to get me now, but I can project that out there. And I need to actually be willing to own that that's a story, that's a regular story that I send out into the world. And sometimes I send it out when it is totally unnecessary, and so I need to recognize that I need to be willing to get some new information, to figure out how I put that story together, and to really listen to see if maybe there's some other options.
So to be willing, one, to know you're making up a story, which we'll go through that a little bit more, and two, be willing to check it out and let new information in, and not be so convinced you're right, which is really tough for some of us.
Okay. So the key here, and this is like, man, if anything has changed my life, it's my willingness to engage in curiosity. And curiosity is simply that willingness to consider, wait a minute, I don't have all the information. There's more possibilities here than what I've restricted myself to from my survival mode and my protector mode. Okay? So a big tool, the tool we want to give you here is just this very idea that in any given situation, we are taking in data, what we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, but see, our sensory information. And that data in and of itself has no meaning attached to it, but it filters through all of our history. And that's where the catch is for me. My history, there were some dangerous people out there. Mm-hmm. And so I learned, if someone shows up just slightly like that, I may project onto them from my own personal filter. I distort everything else I know about them, and that I'm actually grown up now and can take care of myself. And suddenly I've told myself a story that they're out to get me. I mean, this can be as simple as I get an email from United, my flight, about a flight that's been canceled or something, and I read the way I happen to read it. I interpret it as, wait a minute, I have flown with them enough. They should not be doing this to me. Blah, 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 blah.
So like it's unfair.
It's like it's unfair. This is not okay that they've canceled my flight. Which, I'm telling you this, I'm a little embarrassed. But if I settle down and realize, wait a minute, I go back, I reread the email. It's like, okay, because of particular situation that's going on, they're not going to be able to have the flight that I signed up for at the time on the day that I signed up. And they've rescheduled me somewhere else. There's a lot more information there than my original story. And they've actually given me some alternative options that I could contact, through Alaska or another airlines to see if there's a better option. There's a lot in the email that I never saw the first time. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I've got more to go with.
So this personal filter is all our significant emotional events, our gender, our Myers-Briggs types, anything like that. And it's like we have this big filter up here. Information comes in, and this is good, this is bad, and it's just like a giant data table. And so that is starting to become aware, and we work with you guys more on this in our programs, but starting to become aware of how you do. What are these parts of your personal filter, so you can recognize, oh, that's my story again. Because what happens on the other side is you tell yourself a story.
Yeah, because Chris Marie's seen it before. I have called up the United people before, all with a big head of steam, and then I've been like totally, horrified when I realized, wow, I didn't get that you actually offered me an option. I don't do that as much anymore, but it has happened in the past, and now I'm a lot more willing to go back and look at it and say, wait a minute, I don't have a call them up and say, here's what I took, here's what I think you're trying to tell me, and I want to make sure that I understand.
And that's really this bottom piece. Check it out. Do you agree or disagree? So one, break it down. Here's the data. Here's my story. I want to check it out. So you can get more information, and that's actually how you start to kind of open your personal filter, so it's not so creating the same stories over and over and over again.
And I was thinking about some of those discussions that we were talking about, like, it's so easy when you want to go ask for a raise, if you get and you get a no, to assume it's about you, to take it personally or whatever, versus
they don't value me, I don't matter.
As opposed to, wait a minute, maybe that's not an option right now. Maybe for a reason you know nothing about, mm-hmm. or maybe they have something else in mind, and they it's been amazing to me sometimes if I don't just jump to, this is the story. And clients I've known, I remember working with a woman one time who was so convinced that she had offered this company was pursuing her, and she's like, oh, but it would mean I have to move. And she had this whole story running.
Well, what was she worried about?
She was worried she was going to have to move. They weren't really going to, she wasn't sure it would be good for her whole family. She was concerned that they really didn't have a job that fit for her, that she was going to be put into a slice that didn't work, because it had to do with the relocation, and they really wanted her for this job, but I don't think she believed them, really, mm-hmm. frankly. And I remember when I was coaching her, I said, well, if you were really interested in that job, what would be the list of things that you would need to know and have to make it work? And she came up with this amazing list, and I did think it was, I was a coach, but I did think, wow,
well, she wanted to start 3 months later so her kid could finish school.
Yeah.
They were like,
she wanted the house and the move paid for. She wanted her husband had to travel back and forth for a while, so to give some sort of travel fee. It was a pretty extensive list that I was like, okay, well, good, you know what you want. And if that really is what it takes, better to give them that than to just say no to this thing altogether. Mm-hmm. Or take it without asking for all these conditions that really would make it really yummy for them. So she did that, and she got all of the conditions, like all of them. And she ended up taking the move. One of the conditions was that she was able to continue working with the coach. So that's how come I knew everything that happened. And I also realized that, it was she said that was the most powerful thing I'd ever done in mm-hmm. terms of asking for what I want. And I just assumed it couldn't happen. Versus she didn't go in angry or hot. She just said, here, I don't think this is a job I want to do, but the way these are the conditions that I could do it under, and it all worked for her.
So again, this is a model. We want you to encourage, and again, this is just kind of a picture of it, but we do some more in-depth work on it. But start to break down what's the data? What are you taking in information? How are you taking it in? How's it going through your personal filter? And what are the stories you're making up? Because we're always making up stories constantly. We think we're right, which is where we get stuck. And we're really, the reason we use story and interpretation, but story underneath it, is to really kind of drive home the point that this is just a current version. It's not the truth. It's your truth in this moment, and it can change. Okay.
So again, check it out. Don't assume you're right. And this is the, listening. This is really a fundamental thing that we don't use nearly enough.
No.
Listen from the place of being willing to be influenced. That's really what it means to listen with curiosity. Listen with, without thinking you need to change it or
change the other person or change yourself.
First listen before you have to get to the solution. Listen.
I think so. We keep saying the word listen. One way to actively listen is so there's an internal kind of game here where can you actually drop your agenda and take in information. Even if you can't, a great way, you're struggling with listening, a great way is to reflect back what you're hearing, as to see if you're getting it right. And you don't have to reflect back every word, but the gist, and include the emotional tone, like, wow, you sound really upset, and you don't think, let's say if it's a raise, you don't think I deserve a raise, or it's at all the right time for me to be asking. Is that what you're trying to communicate to me? And it's amazing, because what happens when you reflect back what somebody is saying is they don't have to fight to be heard anymore. So their energy just settles right down. And you'd be amazed at what opens up after they feel heard.
And frankly, it's another way to de-escalate your own level of stress. Don't worry about having to agree or disagree at that, or right or wrong at that point. Just, can I actually even understand what they're saying? Mm-hmm. And take a breath and for me, this is often where I may have to manage my reaction and use some of those other techniques so that I really can let in the information.
You mean like the orienting? Feeling your feet. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, and sometimes in these tough conversations, you may go on a lot, or the other person may go on a lot, and it's okay to say, hey, time out if they're going on a lot. You've said a lot. I want to make sure I'm catching what you're saying. So can you just pause and let me reflect back what I've heard so far? Because then you'll also get where you misunderstood them, or you didn't get all of it, and so it's a great clarifying tool. Yeah. It's an iterative tool.
Okay. So, you really do. First, we want to say, you need to learn how to take care of yourself, the me. Recognize what you do that gets in the way. Yeah. And take responsibility for that. For your own reaction. Yes. And then you need to pay attention to the we, the other person, and be willing to get curious and get interested and look at how you may be putting this just one version of the story together. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be done before you can really get to what is the real problem we're trying to solve here. Yeah. And most of the time, that pre-work doesn't get done. That foundational work isn't done. So there needs to be a me, so you need to actually help yourself de-escalate if you're triggered, and also curiosity and interest in checking it out with what's happening over there with the other person to get to the business resolution. And some great questions to ask. Let's say you've asked for a raise, they've reacted, and oh, how could you even ask right now? And you're like, okay. You really want to come back to, why is this so important to me? Like, what is driving me to ask for a raise right now? And what is happening? Why is this so important to the other person? Me not asking for a raise, like something's going on there. Yeah. And what's the overall problem we're trying to solve? So why it might be important to me is because I really want to feel good and valued in this organization, because there might be some other ways that can happen besides getting a raise. My strategy is getting a raise. Or I was thinking about someone I worked with who wanted the raise because they were really having a hard time with their own financial situations, which actually ended up having to do with health insurance, something else totally different. And when that really came out, it was like, well, their boss actually said, well, wait a minute, I can't give you a raise, but I do have this other option that may help you with the health insurance, because, it was a whole different thing, but they couldn't have gotten there if they hadn't have each talked about what was most important to them.
And really, because a lot of times we come in with our strategy, whether it's asking for a raise or giving a coworker feedback. It's like, well, you need to do this. We jump to the solution. And it's really helpful to back up and say, hey, what problem are we trying to solve? Here's the problem I'm trying to solve. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And see if you can create some mutual focus on the problem that you're trying to solve. Because a lot of times we're trying to solve different problems and we're missing each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, we've given you these things as though it's really going to go perfectly. And what we want to say is, inevitably, what happens when everything
goes wrong. Meaning you're reacting, they're reacting. It's something like
you used all these tools we gave you and they still reacted. It did
How
not
could
work.
they?
How
That's
could
not
they?
fair.
Yes. Okay, so, first thing to remember here is that when you start to see those signs that stuff is breaking down, like you either notice your reactions coming up really high or you begin to notice they're going into the things that, like the fight, flight, or freeze, or some sort of sophisticated version of that, rationalizing.
The superstar, the accommodator, or the separator.
The very first thing you need to do is realize that you need to stop the content. Stop just trying to make the point. Because when that's going on, no new information is going to get in.
And the previous slide said safety's at risk, meaning somebody is interpreting safety, there's a threat. And safety is a mental construct, so it looks different for everybody, so you can't know what the person needs, but you can stop trying to make your point and say, whoa, okay, I noticed something's going on. You seem to have a lot of energy. I'm interested and want to know. Like be present about about what's happening right now.
Because, again, this is one of those situations that is one of my favorite quotes. It's not what you do, it's what you do next. And having the style that I have, fairly aggressive and intense or whatever, it's really been important for me to notice the impact I'm having and not get so caught up in, uh-oh, I came in like a freight train, but be more interested in, okay, what am I going to do now? Now that I see that I'm too charged up or they're clearly backing up and that wasn't what I meant to create, what could I do to make this situation different?
Because this is where I think a lot of times we don't want to lead you astray and say there's a perfect formula. No. There's never really going to be a perfect formula, and you can get better at this. And your willingness to kind of hang in with the messiness, which is, the messiness is your own reaction, somebody else's reaction, and learn that that does not mean failure. So many of the clients, when I first start coaching them, are trying to say things just right and make it perfect so nobody reacts. As one, it's a tremendous amount of pressure. Two, you cannot know how to say it so that they don't react because you're not in their brain. Right. The only thing you can do is show up honestly, help you settle down, and then check it out and be willing to go, wow, that did not go well. And I'm right here. I'm not going away. And they may still shut down, but that doesn't mean you failed. I think so many people beat themselves up because they didn't do it just right because somebody over there had a reaction. I mean, I can relate to that.
All right, so we want to kind of go through some of the takeaways we think we've provided you, hopefully. So one, be aware of your opt-out style. What do you do when you think the saber-tooth tiger's in the room? And how have you sophisticated that and rationalized that opt-out style as being really valuable?
So I just kind of want to echo, like, are you a fight, flight, or freezer? Are you aware that you might be freezing? Because I had to kind of wake up to that fact, and then I noticed my flighting, and I can also be a fighter. So one, you can do all three, but notice which one, and then how does that show up more sophisticated? Am I a superstar and I just do it my way? Am I accommodator or will just do it your way? Or do I just separate and go do something else? So again, being aware of those different styles.
And the key when you're in the midst of that conversation is to be willing to be vulnerable. Recognize what's really going on for you and take responsibility for your inner reaction, not having to make it the other person take care of that.
Because so often people say, well, we need to have rules, like on teams. Well, we need to have rules and that's not okay. And really, you can only have so many rules and people are going to be human and messy. And the more you're willing to show up and be real, vulnerable, and curious about the other, those are two magic ingredients that are going to help you build a bridge.
And the key to building up that ability to be curious and also even to be vulnerable, really, is to break it down. Break down the situation. Look at it in its parts and see, how did I get to my story? Because your story is not a fact. How did you get there?
And again, the breaking it down, I just want to kind of link it back for you. That's like the data. So what did you see and hear? What's going on in your personal filter? Like, what are your main stories that you run over and over and over again? And then what's the story you told yourself? And can you actually check it out and see if that's how the person put the world together? Because they may not have.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bet 99% of the time they haven't put it together that way.
And the next part is listen, with that idea of being influenced, and reflect back when you get stuck. Remember, it's not your job to agree at this point, but you still can reflect back what you're hearing.
And just like Susan said when we were going through this, when you take the time to say, wow, you seem really upset, sounds like you don't think I really care about whatever it is, you can give yourself time to settle down, and you also provide this experience of the other person has a chance of feeling heard, which helps them settle. Or you can clarify what's missing there.
And finally, that last piece, it's what you do next. So remember, it's not the mistake you just made. Most of us can dwell on that for a long time, which just takes us out of the ability to self-correct and do something different. Okay.
So, and we wanted to just say where I was going to go ahead and go to that.
Okay.
Some of the things that these online programs that we offer is Build Your Mojo, which is really about helping you kind of take a goal and make it happen, because you have those things that you keep procrastinating on and they don't happen. And we're starting a new one February 21st. That's just a 4-week program. It's got a lot of neat tools in it. We talk about where are those conversations you're not having and support you in having them. That's only one of the tools we help. There's this Mandela thing, there's connection to your wise one, lots of goodies. That's starting in February, so join us if you want to do that one. And then we also do Be Brave, which is really focused on how to find your voice. There's an in-depth process of dealing with your reactions and those tools, speaking up, and making sure you're creating what you want in your relationships.
And the last one, gotta love that one. Find your mojo in Montana, and that basically means you get to come out here and visit us.
It's so fun.
And we'll work with you, and you also get the chance to work with the horses when you come and do that. And a lot of the coaching I love doing is because I think horses are amazing mirrors and really a lot more gentle than I am. I'm actually more gentle when
She's actually not that bad.
I'm not. But anyway, Finding in Montana has more to it than just the horses. It's a lot that goes on in
the
that
whole
weekend.
Experience.
But we that's happening in May, so we'd love to have you if any of that sounds appealing to you.
And we didn't put any branding stuff on this, but if you want to find any more information out about that, you can go to Thrive Inc. ThriveInc.com, and our website's going through. They should be under programs, services, or programs. We're just changing our website right now, so you can find them there. But we would love
not radical changes to the website. We're just doing a few reorienting so that it's a little easier to
find
access.
stuff.
Because I kind of like our website. I think it's doing pretty darn good. But we do need to organize it.
So, and if we are happy to answer your questions. If you have follow-up emails that you want to email us, you can email us at thrive@thriveinc.com. Any questions. This recording will go out to you in an email in it takes a while to convert, but it'll go out in a little bit. And we'd love to actually, if you have any questions or need any coaching, we're happy to help. And we work with organizations and individuals.
And if you have any questions at this point, feel free to type them in. And if not, do we have anything else we want to say before we?
No, we should have said that a long time ago, because we're going to sign off now.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to end the recording here, and
thank you for joining us, and we hope it was helpful. And we're happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay.
We're going to leave the webinar now.
Okay. We'll just do that. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. I'm not sure how to do that. Clearly, we're used to having
our Cody, our assistant.
Stop recording. Okay.